Shalom and welcome back to the Rashi Nosh. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Kara.
This week, our Torah portion is called Ki-Tavo. And this is one of my favorite Torah portions because it talks about the first fruits. And this is something that I think is very important for us to apply to our spiritual lives, even though this specifically is talking about the land of Israel and what's known as the 7 species of produce or plants, things that are going on in the land of Israel. I think we can make a spiritual application in our lives about giving our best to the Lord. I just want to focus this week on the first 2 verses of our Torah portion, and they go like this. And it will be, when you come into the land which the Lord your God gives you for an inheritance, and you possess it and settle in it, that you shall take of the first of all the fruit of the ground, which you will bring from your land, which the Lord your God is giving you. And you shall put them into a basket, and go to the place which the Lord your God will choose to have his name dwell there. Now, as the passage continues on, there's like a little speech that you give. There's like a little script that you say. My father was a wandering Aramean, and it goes on from there. But the reason I want to mention these 2 verses is because of what Rashi says here. First of all, it's important to remember that it says, when you come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and you possess and settle in it. Why is that important? Well, Rashi tells us that this means that they are not obligated to bring the first fruits until they've conquered the land and divided it into the tribal lands, into the tribal areas. This is important. There are some commandments that you simply cannot do without being in the land of Israel, and there are certain commandments that you can't do, even to this day in the Torah, if there's no temple standing. So it's important that Moses, remember, he's entering the last part of his life. The book of Devarim, or Deuteronomy, as we've mentioned before, is this 30-day series of sermons or messages. It's almost like Moses' personal diary. It's like his journal. It's, what do I need to say to the children of Israel before I pass away? What do I need to tell them before I die? And it's important for us to know that just because Moses is giving them this information, this command, doesn't mean that they can necessarily do it right then. This is a command that's going to happen as they enter the land and possess it. And it also says, of the first, in verse 2, of the first of the fruits. Because not all fruits are subject to the mitzvah or the commandment of the first fruits. Only the 7 species for which the land of Israel is noted. So here in our verse, where it says the word eretz, or land, and the verse that is describing it, it means the land of Israel. It says a land of wheat and barley, vines and figs and pomegranates, a land of oil-producing olives and honey. Oil-producing olives. Now we might think, well, don't all olives produce oil? But we'll get there in just a moment. So, just as the earlier verse in Deuteronomy 8, chapter 8, is referring to the 7 species throughout which the land of Israel is praised. These are the fruits and the things that it's really praised for. Now, we could get a little confused when it says honey, because you could think, well, that's not a produce. That's not something that is grown. But we're not talking about bee honey here. We're talking about date honey from the date palm. So these are the things, the plants, the vines. Obviously, that's talking about grapes for wine and just for eating grapes and making raisins. These are things that the land of Israel is praised for. Now, Rashi says that it's interesting that it says oil-producing olives. This means, according to Sifrei 26:2, it means that these are olives of superior quality, olives that retain their oil and keep it gathered, as it were, inside themselves. Olives that really retain their oil. Thus, that it is a superior fruit. It's a superior olive, which must be brought here. And it also says the same of the honey. It's a superior quality honey that is the honey of dates. This also comes from Sifrei 26:2. Now, I will mention this last comment by Rashi, and then we'll talk a bit about it. Of the first of all the fruit. What is the process in taking the fruits? Rashi finds it important, and so we'll mention it. The process by which you would identify what the first fruit is. So it says, a man goes down into his field, and he sees that a fig has ripened. He winds a reed around it for a sign and declares, this is the first fruit. So it's important. The Torah obviously thinks it's important to mention. God gave Moses the words to say and to write down here. So obviously it's important somehow for the Lord to have the Torah say that a man marks the first fruit in this way, at least in Rashi's commentary. This made me think of us really marking, really setting aside the first fruits that we have for God. We often have said in many different contexts that if you do something for the Lord, it ought to be your best. And this brings up an interesting subject, which is sometimes difficult to talk about it, and it can sound a little maybe controversial, but I'm just going to go here with us. We have all been blessed by music that we've heard in a certain service. We've all been really brought into the presence of God, sometimes assisted by the talent and the ability and the preparation, the education that someone has when they're leading us. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is Chazan Gordon, is Cantor Peter. I've recently worked with him in the studio as we are recording the classes for Shuvu College and of Messianic Judaism and our school of Chazanut, to study to be a Chazan, to be someone that leads the liturgy. We would be blessed by anyone who is chanting the prayers of Israel or chanting the scripture. However, if we are honest with each other, there is a special blessing that's associated when someone is really studied and really educated and really prepared, and I'll even go so far as to say really talented. There's something about that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with us admitting that we are blessed by the talent that God has given people. Now, we're both singers, we're both musicians, and so this is something that we have talked about, and certainly in our church, you are one of our worship leaders, and you guys rehearse, you learn new songs, you practice, you individually practice throughout the week if you have a new song that you're learning. And then on Sunday morning, you guys come together and you do a rehearsal and a sound check to make sure that everything is just right. There's nothing wrong with being talented and prepared. And I think there's nothing wrong with mentioning that we are blessed by people giving the first fruits of their ability to the Lord. Now, all of us have experienced worship that is led by someone who has maybe more availability than they have ability. And we can be blessed by that. We can be blessed by someone who maybe doesn't have the most beautiful voice, but is leading us in worship, or in a Jewish context, leading us throughout the Siddur. But there is something to the preparation that we're not phoning it in, so to speak. It would not be at all appropriate. It would not be giving God our first fruits if we just showed up on Sunday morning without rehearsing or making sure that it sounds nice. It would not be giving God our first fruits of our talent to treat it cavalierly or casually. So, although sometimes we don't like to talk about talent and ability and preparation, because I think we're concerned about us putting a spotlight on ourselves or thinking that it's about us. But I think we need to be honest with ourselves and say we are always blessed by people that are well prepared and that are talented in doing what it is that they do. And so giving the first fruits, when we talk about our talents and our abilities, anything that you do, we're talking about music because music is what we do. But whatever it is that you do for the Lord, whatever it is that you do in service in your congregation, you must do your best. You must do it in excellence, or it's not worthy of doing it for the Lord. There are people, performers, that will prepare and rehearse and get everything just right before they put on a big performance before an audience. How much more should we, that are not performing, but trying to serve in a capacity in our congregations, if you run the tech in your congregation, if you're clicking the slides, or if you're running the lights or the soundboard or something like that, you must give it your best. If you're a teacher, you must be well prepared. You can't just get up and say, well, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I might talk about this today. That's not honoring the Lord with your first fruits. That's like giving the Lord your leftovers. Someone gets your first. Someone gets your first fruits. And if it's not the Lord, it could be you, it could be your job, it could be someone else. It could be someone that you're trying to impress. But someone is getting your best, and it needs to be the Lord. I don't think there's anything wrong. In fact, I think it honors the Lord to be prepared and to do your very, very best. Now, all of us have different varying levels of ability. So that's not to say that it's not good enough or not worthy if you're not as good as someone else. That's not the point. Are you doing your best? And I think that this needs to be true in all areas of our life. You help coach our girls' volleyball team at our school. And I'm sure you have said to them, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure that you've said to them that if you do your best, and I know you're doing your best, that's what's the most important thing. If you lose the match and they did their best, you're not going to yell at them or whatever.
Disappointed. Yeah, no, for sure. And if they're trying, like you said, doing their best, giving their every effort, coming to practices, doing what they, not, staying up all night the night before, being responsible with it, then absolutely, yeah, I agree.
So do you think that it's possible, and if it is, do you think it's important to give your best, even for something that doesn't seem spiritual? If you're playing on the volleyball team, do you think it's a spiritual act to do everything as unto the Lord, even playing a sport?
I think so, because I feel like no matter the situation, God did give you the ability, the talent, or the athleticism to be involved. And so not only are you doing that for him, but others are watching you. You know what I mean? So you're setting an example for others as well. So I feel like in most aspects of life, you should be giving, 100% for his glory, because you are portraying him 24/7. So if you're just, halfway walking through something, it's going to show. People are going to recognize that, and they're not going to seem authentic. And so, and of course, it doesn't glorify God, and he will feel jilted in a way.
Well, and I think it probably needs to be mentioned as well that it doesn't matter whether you have a natural talent or ability. You still have to do your best.
Yeah.
Just because we have natural abilities toward music doesn't mean that we still don't work very hard to do our best and we're prepared. I think sometimes people think that if you have a talent or a natural gifting towards something that you don't have to work at it. And that's just not true. We want to try to honor the Lord in everything.
Makes me think of, I don't have a natural talent for speaking in front of people, but God has asked me to do that on Wednesday nights with the youth, and I'm doing it, and I prepare as best as I can, and I'm trying.
You don't have a natural desire to be on camera either.
Correct.
But this Torah cycle, you have joined us, and we have heard from many, many couples and, well, I mean, everybody, but especially couples and women are so happy to hear from one of our wives as leaders. And I have been encouraging some of our morim to have their wives alongside them, and for some of our morim that are morot to have their husbands alongside them. I think this is good. It's a good thing for us to do. We have to work at this. We can't just phone this in either. You know, even making these videos, it's something that we need to work hard at. Whether it's this or Pearls of Torah, even Zadie, Brady, and Kof, they have to work very hard. As much as a Jewish grandpa and a monkey can work.
Bananas.
There's a lot of bananas involved. Kof only gets paid in bananas, and so we're hoping he's okay with that. Anyway, give the Lord your first. Give him your first fruits of your talents, of your ability, of your giftedness. Even give your first fruits if you don't feel like you're naturally gifted in public speaking, but God is calling you into youth ministry for this season. I think it's wonderful. And I think sometimes even when we don't have a natural gifting to it, I think the glory of God shines through even more because people know that we're out of our comfort zone. Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So publicly, I want to say thank you for being willing to do that. On Wednesday nights at our church, as I'm teaching adults, you're teaching our teenagers, and that is not something that you ever desired to do, but there was a need and you stepped up. God called you to do it. I'm very proud that you're doing that. It's awesome.
Thank you.
So give God your best, no matter what it is. Anything in life can have a spiritual component to it. Everything is spiritual, even on the volleyball court, the way we conduct ourselves, our sportsmanship, all of that stuff. It all can be giving our first fruits to God. Thank you so much for joining us. We are praying for you. God bless you wherever you are. Shalom and kol tuv.